Everybody, my name is Tami Katzoff. I am an advisor at the Career Center, and today I am going to help you conquer the job and internship fair with an amazing resume. And if you notice the background, you might notice it's backwards because I'm still learning how to use Zoom even after all these years. But I put myself on campus because I'm excited that it's autumn and summer's pretty much over. Let's hope. Okay, so this is going to be in two parts. The first part, we're going to look at a very fine website. The second part, we're going to have a little bit of a PowerPoint slides. And after that, hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull up a website, share my screen. Hold on, let's see. Still learning how to use Zoom after all these years. I got it. Okay. So this very fine website is the Career Center website. Very easy to find, american.edu/career center. Lots of resources on here. But for today, because of the topic of our workshop, we're going to be starting with resumes. Okay, so we're just going to click on that. And then you will see that there are several different types of resume formats. But for our purposes, we're going to be looking at chronological resumes. So these are the most common format of resume. And in general, this is what employers are going to want to see from you, unless you are applying for like a federal job, not a federal internship, but a federal job. That's slightly different. So we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about chronological resumes, which is probably what you're going to need to have ready to go for the fair. So on the right here, we have a lot of stuff. So since we're looking at chronological resumes, we're going to look first at a template. Okay. We have a really, really good template that you can just kind of plug your information in there. So I'm going to click on the first and second year undergraduate template. And basically, this is going to be sort of what your resume is going to look like. You can actually download this template and just plug in all your stuff and just use this. Avoid other templates that you might find online, maybe Google, maybe Canva. Don't use those. Use ours. Okay. Trust me, you don't want to use those other templates. They might make it seem like it's easier when you're creating them, but it's actually harder when you want to go in and change it, update it. But ours, you shouldn't have that problem. So this is what a resume should look like. So I'm just going to take you through it. Your name is going to be the top thing, okay? And probably going to be the biggest thing on your resume. And then up under your name, you're going to have your contact information. At the very least, an email address and a phone number. But some people still put their home address on there for various reasons. But these days, it's not absolutely needed. So some people leave their home address out altogether. Some people just put a city and state. And that's up to you. But you need an email address. You need a phone number. And if you happen to have a LinkedIn that you really like, your LinkedIn profile, a lot of people put their LinkedIn URL in that section as well. But you want to make sure that your LinkedIn URL or that your LinkedIn profile is updated, perfect, ready to go with a really nice profile photo. Otherwise, don't put your LinkedIn URL up there. Okay. Now, since you're being educated, I assume that all or most of you are being educated right now. Your education section is going to be next. Okay. Once you are well out into the working world, your education section can move down towards the bottom. And then your experience section will move up. But right now, your education section is going to be at the top. So notice under the heading education, American University, Washington, D.C. And then on the right, you're going to have the month and year that you expect to graduate, or the month and year that you graduated, if you graduated already. Okay. You don't need when you started, you just need when you're finishing. Okay. And you don't need to use the words expected graduation date. People understand that if you're putting in a future month and year, that's when you expect to graduate. Okay. So that should all be on the first line. Right. Then beneath that, the degree that you're getting and your field of study. So Bachelor of Arts in English Literature, if that's one of our majors, something like that. Okay. And if you have a minor, you can put your minor in there as well. You can put a GPA. You don't have to put your GPA on your resume. If you're proud of your GPA and it's pretty high and you want to show it off, go ahead and put it on your resume if you want to, but it's not a required element of a resume. And then we have more optional items under that. Study abroad, relevant coursework, honors, although honors can be a separate section if you have a lot of honors. But those are some things that you can add to your education section. For example, Dean's List, and then followed by the semesters that you were on Dean's List, things like that. If you're a first year or early sophomore, you'll probably have your high school information on there. After that, you want to take off your high school information to make room for the current stuff, the college stuff. But when you're first starting out, to have your high school on there is fine. And notice, so I see some questions already, but we're going to hold off until I get to the end of the document, I think. Notice how all the dates are lined up on the right-hand side. That makes it easier for the reader to scan. Okay, so I always prefer to see all the dates on the document lined up really nicely on the right-hand side. So it's going to start with your month and year of graduation, and then it's going to continue all the way down through the document. All the dates should be lined up like that. Okay, now we're going to move on to the experience section. So the three things that right now that are absolutely required for your resume are this top section with your name and contact information, an education section because you're currently being educated, and some kind of experience section. That's it. Everything else is gravy. Okay, so we'll get to the gravy part in a little bit, but let's look at the experience section, which is really the most important thing on your resume. So you're going to have the heading experience, and you're going to start with your first role. Okay, whether it's an internship or a job or a volunteer or something, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. So you're going to have your title. Let's say it's research assistant. And then you're going to have the organization or the company where you're doing that research, and location, city, state. Okay. Then once again, all the way on the right, you're going to put the month and year that you started, and then a hyphen, and the month and year that you finished. But if you're still doing it, you would put the word present or current. So the month and year that you started, and then a hyphen, and then the word current or present. Okay, now, these bullet points, the absolute most important thing on the resume, okay? This is where you're going to describe what you're actually doing or did, what you accomplished there. So you're going to go for an average of 3 bullet points per role, and you're going to start with an action verb, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But this is where you put what you were accomplishing or what you accomplished on this job / internship. Okay. So an average of 3 per role. You can have 4, you can have 2, but you want to go for an average of 3. Okay. You're always going to use bullet points here, and you want to save your bullet points for these job description areas. Okay. The bullet points, again, make it easier for the reader. You always want to think about making things easier for the reader. That's why the dates are lined up on the right. That's why you're using bullet points, okay? So you don't have to list everything you're doing on this job or internship. You want to really think about the most relevant, impressive things and pick, okay? So it's highlights, all right? It's basically the highlights of what you were doing or what you are doing. Okay. And it's going to be the same thing throughout the experience section. Now, you're going to go in reverse chronological order within each section. This is a chronological resume, but you're actually going in reverse chronological order within each section. So you're going to start with the most recent job or internship on the top here, and then you're going to work your way back in time down the page. Okay. Now, this is the gravy part, the extra part. Okay, we put in our template a section called Campus and Community Service, but there's so many different things that you can put on a resume, so many different subject headings. It can be athletics, it can be an entire volunteer section, it can be an honor section. There's really no end to what you can put on your resume as far as things that you want to show off. So you can, campus involvement or, Greek life or something like whatever. So this is kind of the extra stuff. But ideally you want to format them the same way as your experience section, especially if you have a leadership role. So let's say that you have a leadership role in a organization on campus. President, co-chair, whatever, treasurer. You want to format that the same way as you're formatting things in your experience section. Okay. Now, down at the bottom, you will see a skills section. There's a little bit of controversy over whether this is a required section. Some people say it is. Some people, like myself, say it is not. But if you have especially skills that most other people don't, or many other people don't have, why not show them off in a skills section? So the things that go in a skills section are generally computer related or languages. So when I say computer related, it's the names of software that you know how to use, the names of databases that you know how to use. Like if you know how to use Python or R or Adobe Photoshop, that would go in the skills section in the computer subsection. Okay. Language is any foreign language. Okay. And you don't have to be fluent to put a language on your resume. You can quantify it by stating your level of proficiency. So you can put something like basic conversational French or fluent Japanese. Okay. So as long as you quantify, you can go ahead and put it on your resume. You don't have to be fluent. Now, some people have taken foreign language, but they're not comfortable putting it on their resume. Then don't do it. If you're not comfortable putting something on your resume, if you feel like someone's going to start up a conversation in that language that you really don't remember, then don't put it on your resume. Totally fine. So this is the format of a resume. And this could be for anybody, any student. Now we have below that an example, a filled out example of what this would be like according to this template. Okay, so this person named Monique James, and she's got a lot of stuff in her education section, including relevant coursework and projects. And then different experiences, just one long experience section, which a lot of people do have. And then skill section on the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to go back and show you that there are many, many more examples of these resumes here under resume examples. So if you go into chronological samples, there's going to be like a dozen. They're not all going to look exactly the same. Okay, I have my preferences and other people have theirs. So I do like to see dates lined up on the right, because I really think that it helps the reader instead of hunting around for information. They're just seeing it there. Some people like to put also locations on the right. Okay. My favorite of these is going to be called first name, last name. And there's a few that are called first name, last name. Here's one. But this is my favorite. All caps, first name, last name, because it really goes according to that template that I just showed you. Okay. All the dates are beautifully lined up on the right. You've got really good use of the bullet points here. And there is a campus and community service section. And then skills on the bottom. Okay, and these are the type of skills that you would be putting in a skills section. Not really Facebook and Twitter is not called Twitter anymore. Everyone really knows at this point how to use social media, but let's say you knew how to use software called Hootsuite, which schedules and posts social media posts. Then you would put Hootsuite on there instead of Facebook and Twitter. But Google Analytics, SPSS, all of that stuff would definitely go in a skill section. And then you see language, Spanish, advanced written and spoken. Okay, so this is my favorite. But all the others are good in their own way. They all really follow the basic rules. And we're going to talk more about the basic rules. Okay, I'm going to check out the questions just to see if there's something that I should pause for at this point. Okay. For double majors, do we state that we are double majoring? Yes. For Clegg, do we spell it out or leave it as an N? So I would both spell out Clegg and put it in parentheses as Clegg, if that makes sense. If you're a Clegg major, you know what I'm talking about. So you want to fully spell out the major and then CLEG in parentheses. For GPA, would include your high school GPA? No. Okay. If you have a job that is seasonal, yeah, so that's a really good question. A lot of people during the summers, they might go home and work in a certain place or, work at a camp or something. So yes, you can put the word seasonal in parentheses next to dates of when you started and when you finished, or if you're still doing it, to show that it is a seasonal job. Okay. For older students, like a grad student, do you still need an extracurricular section? No. As I said, that all that stuff is extra. You can have any type of section on your resume, or it can just be one long experience section. You don't need it. That's just extra stuff. Like if you're involved with other things, and if there's room on your resume, you can put that on your resume. Let's see what I can do now. Do we need to include proficiency in Word and Outlook? No. Just put it in there. Can you put certifications? Absolutely, yes. So you might want to have a section at the bottom called skills and certifications, which I see a lot. So then you can include your skills, but also your certifications. If you're a freshman, do you include relevant coursework? I would say not yet, because you're probably not taking a lot of courses that are super relevant to your major. But I mean, if you are, then sure. And you don't want to put all the courses in there. You just want to put the courses that are relevant to who's ever seeing this resume. Okay. If you're an undergraduate freshman, what kind of experience do you put? Well, if you're a first-year student, then yeah, you're going to have high school stuff in there, right? That's probably most of what you've done was in high school. So that's what you're going to start with. But as you get more involved with stuff on campus or internships or whatever, then the high school stuff is going to come out to make room for the college stuff. Okay. If the volunteer or job was only for 1 year or a short period, so remember, you're putting month and year, right? Not just year to year, month and year. So it can be May-June 2022. Okay, so even if it's a short time, you should include the months. Should we list our jobs chronologically, or can we list our most prevalent and impressive roles first? Always do in reverse chronological order within each section, okay? But here's the thing. You don't just have to have one long experience section. So I'm going to give you an extreme example, which is me and my resume. I'm not going to show it to you. But before doing higher ed work, which is, of course, what I'm doing now, I had a whole other career in media. So I don't want to take all my media stuff off my resume, and I don't want to have a fully reverse chronological resume in which there's just one long experience section with everything. So what I did was I divided my sections. So I broke down the long experience section into 2 separate sections. So the first section, which you see the highest on the resume, is my higher education experience. Okay. And then the second section below that is my media experience. So I've broken it down into 2 sections, focusing on what I'm doing now, which is higher education, but still showing that I have all this other stuff that I've done before, but in a separate section. So you can always do that. People don't think that you need to have one resume for everything. It's not like that. A resume is not a one size fits all thing. People have different versions of their resumes depending on who's going to see it, right? So for example, let's say you were applying to a barista job at Starbucks, and you were also applying to a research assistant job. So you might want to have 2 different versions of your resume. One of them focusing on your customer service experience for the Starbucks job, and one of them focusing on your research experience for the research job. And that's just moving sections around and renaming sections, right? So one would be customer service experience, and one could be research experience, okay? So I see that there are more questions. Okay, some of these are not easily answered, but I'm going to give it a go. If you're a freshman, should you include leadership roles in high school clubs? Yeah. Again, because right now what you've got is your high school experience. So absolutely, leadership roles, yes. At what point in your freshman year should we begin to include our GPA? Don't include it in your freshman year, because you don't have really one yet. So if you're going to put a GPA on your resume, wait till at least till your sophomore year. What if you had multiple positions in the same organization? That's a good question. So list the name of the organization. So you're basically breaking it down. List the name of the organization, the location, put all the dates on the right from when you started to now, or when you finished. And then below that, put the separate job titles. Okay. Or another way of doing it is to break up the dates as well. So have one line just for the organization and the location, and then job title most recent with dates on the right, and then bullet points, and then job title second most recent, dates on the right, bullet points. I hope that makes sense. A film student has been told that he should have a short description about himself and the types, or herself, the types of films you make under your name and contact information. Okay. For certain situations like film, you're going to have a different type of resume entirely. And for that, I would make an appointment with the SOC Career Advisor, because we don't have enough time to go into that, but it might look a little different for film. Or like if you're a theater student and you have like a performance resume, that's going to look very different. So in certain cases, it's going to look a little different. So for that, I would definitely recommend talking to your career advisor for sure about that. What is the best way to describe extracurriculars like athletics? Well, if you are or were an athlete, you definitely want to have a separate athletic section, because that's super important. Focus on what, if you have a certain position or role on a team, you want to write that in. Again, dates the same. And for your bullet points, note how many hours a week that you were dedicated to this, and what exactly you're doing. So like you were playing games, traveling, watching films, doing practices. So like, combine that all up and add it up and note the hours per week that you're doing, because that's like a big impact. That shows that you really have to be pretty good with time management to be able to do that. So that's how I would put an athletics role. Okay, before I answer any more questions, I want to hopefully we'll be able to get to all of them, but I want to get to the part 2 of my presentation. Okay, so let's hold the questions for now. All right. This is Tami's rules of resume writing. Hold on. I want to make sure. I don't know if you can see that, so I'm just going to start that again. Okay. This is Tami's rules of resume writing. Okay. Want to make sure to get to this before we finish. So these are not only my rules, these are pretty much everybody's rules. Okay. Some of them we already mentioned, some we didn't, but they're super important. Okay. So I did mention that your name should be the biggest thing on the document. You want to fully spell out your degree. So spell out Bachelor of Arts and not BA, or Bachelor of Science and not BS, etc. Fully spell out the months. So avoid abbreviating things like months. Never use the words I or my or we or our on a resume. Usually you can just take those out, because remember, what you're putting on a resume is not full sentences, it's sentence fragments. You're not writing in narrative form. Okay, so you don't want to use those words. If you see it, take it out, and it usually will still make sense. Okay, as far as font styles, use a traditional style like Arial or Cambria, or if there's anything else that you like, just not script or Old English or something untraditional like that. Okay, the most traditional used to be Times New Roman, but apparently Times New Roman doesn't work very well with applicant tracking systems, which is, we don't even have to go into that. So stick with sans serif font styles like Arial. Okay, font size. The acceptable font sizes are 10, 11, or 12 points. Okay. I've seen a lot of resumes with 8-point font size, and I'm like, no, I cannot read that. My old eyes cannot even see that. So minimum is 10, maximum is 12. I try to go for the sweet spot of 11. So you can make, again, your name's going to be bigger, and you can make your section headings maybe a little bigger, but I think the bulk of your resume, what you should be going for is 11 points. Okay. Margins. Margins should be equal all around. Now, when you open a Word document, let's say, the default margin is going to be 1 inch all around, top, bottom, left, and right. You don't have to keep that. If you feel like you need to put more on that 1-page resume and you don't have room for it, you can narrow your margins, but not smaller than 1/2 inch. Okay. And if you're going to narrow left and right 1/2 inch, then you should narrow top and bottom 1/2 inch. Okay. Experiences within each section should be in reverse chronological order, like I've mentioned. Right? Even if there might be some things that you feel are more impressive or impactful, it might confuse the reader. So reverse chronological order within each section. But once again, you can break up your experience section into different sections in order to really have the reader focus on something that you want them to focus on. Okay. Job or internship descriptions, meaning the bullet points, should begin with a strong action verb, and I'll get more into that. What I don't like to see is helped with, assisted with. Don't do that. Go right to the thing that you were doing, right to the action verb. And once again, we'll talk more about that in a minute. You don't want to have any big blocks of text on your resume. That's why we use the bullet points to break things up and make it easier for the reader to get the information. No colors other than black, no pictures, borders, or shading. Now, there are some exceptions. If this is a theater resume, you're probably going to have your picture on the back. But other than things like that, you're not going to have anything fancy on your resume. No colors, no nothing. I don't even like underlining things, you know, having like an underline between sections. I don't like that. It just takes up space. So stick with black on white. The document should be 1 page long, except if you're a graduating senior and you have 2 full pages of content, then a 2-page resume is fine. Of course, if you're a grad student and you have 2 pages of content, or if you're an alum, 2 pages is fine. But the thing is, you're never going to go beyond 2 pages unless it's a different type of resume, federal resume, and a CV, which is a totally different thing. But chronological resume should never be longer than 2 pages, whether you've been working 2 years or 20 years. Okay. So 2 pages max. That means that eventually you're going to have to be making the hard decisions of what you're going to leave in and what you're going to take out. We can't, but at some point we're going to have to take out stuff. You know, it's just highlights of highlights. Fortunately, there's LinkedIn, which you can put everything on. There's no maximum, right? But 2 pages maximum for any kind of chronological resume. All right. Now, I talked about strong action verbs that you want to start your bullet points with. Well, these are some examples of what I was talking about. So these are all words relating to research. Okay. And it goes in chronological order. I'm not going to read them all to you. But you can see that there's so many different kinds of action verbs related to research. One of them is research. But you want to go right to the thing that you're doing in that bullet point, right to, not helped with or, assisted with or anything like that. Just go right to the thing, right? And all of these verbs and more are just related to research, okay? So you can find lists like these all over the place. We have them at the Career Center somewhere. But this is just an example of the types of words that you want to start your bullet points with, the really strong action verbs that showed what you were doing and what you were accomplishing. Okay, so now let's look back at questions. So there were a lot of questions in the chat, I think, that Emily got. Let's see how many I can answer. Okay. What if you are not sure when you will graduate yet? I would still put a month and year, whatever you think is going to happen. Because again, you can always change it, right? It's not set in stone, but whatever you think is going to happen, that's what you should put on your resume and then change it later. How far back should my years of experience be? Well, again, think about that one page, unless you're graduating senior or above. So whatever fits, right? Again, if you're a first-year student and what you have is basically high school stuff, then that's what's going to be there. If you're a sophomore or a junior, then you're not going to want to focus on that high school stuff. So it's not going to be that far back. But once again, if it's something that you think is impressive and relevant and it fits on the page, then I would say go ahead. That's my non-answer to that question. Does Times New Roman work? I was told that with applicant tracking systems, it doesn't look so good. But my resume is in Times New Roman, I think. So maybe stay away from it. Again, that's a serif font. It has like little squigglies and things like that. So maybe stick with a sans serif font like Arial. Oh, I see that we tried to, okay. Trebuchet, okay. All right, are there any more questions, Emily, somewhere else that I'm not finding them?
Not in the chat, just the ones back in the Q&A section.
Okay. Grad student, do I still use the functional or chronological? Definitely not a functional. No. Chronological resume for sure, for most cases, unless it's going to be something like a federal resume. But a federal resume is also a chronological resume. It's just with more stuff on it. Are recommendations from employers worth including? No. So it used to be that people would put references on their resume. Then they stopped doing that, and then they started putting a line on the bottom, you know, references if desired or something. References will be provided if desired, but we don't do that either. If someone's asking for references, then you give it to them on a separate document with the title references, but you don't put them on your resume unless it's a federal resume, but we're not talking about that. Can we put activities on our resume that don't relate to our major? Absolutely. Yes. Of course. Yes. Not everything on your resume has to do with your major, just the opposite, right? You want to show that you're a well-rounded person with lots of interests and have done other things, so they don't have to relate to your major. Is Calibri a good font to use? I don't remember. I would have to see it. If it's a sans serif font, I think it's fine, but I don't know. Emily? I don't know. Do you know what
I was
Calibri
gonna say, yeah, Calibri is a sans serif font. It's kind of the default for Word programs now for most part in Outlook. So it is a fine font to use for your resume.
Thank you. Excellent. All right. Oh, so no open questions here. Does anyone have any other questions that they just want to voice, or can we even do that, Emily?
We can, if anyone wants to come off mute, if you just want to raise your hand, I can have you come off mute and you can interact verbally with Tami for the webinar. So just raise your hand to let us know if you'd like to do that. Otherwise, you're welcome to post more questions in the Q&A or the webinar chat.
Yes, I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions because I know that there's so many elements to a resume, and it can be everyone has their own experiences. So anything else? If nothing else comes up, then I will actually talk about a federal resume just for a little bit, because I keep mentioning it.
There is one in the Q&A, and I was gonna also, once you answer that, if you could speak to how many copies of a resume folks should bring to the job fair next week, that sort of stuff. And the print question, there we go. Someone was asking that as I said it.
Okay, so yes, you should bring resumes to the fair. Now, this is what I would do. Okay, there's going to be more than 100 employers at the fair. So I would, first of all, look at the employers that you want to talk to. And that's who you're going to prioritize seeing, right? So definitely print out enough resumes for those tables that you know that you want to see. And then an extra 10 for just in case you see something that you didn't know about before. Okay, because you don't need to print a resume for every employer that's going to be there, because you probably won't be talking to them, right? So let's save the trees and just really think about, okay, there's 20 employers that I really want to talk to. So then I would print out 30 resumes. How's that? What's my ideal font? Arial is super traditional, and so I like it, but I could, that could change on a dime. There's so many fonts out there that you can choose from. I mean, Arial is something I used to use way back in the day, but I'd have to look at the fonts now to pick a favorite. Okay, so
Tami, can I quickly just make a plea for those printing resumes? The library is the best place to do so. I do just want to mention that they have asked us, please print early. So there will be a very, very long line to print your resume the morning of the fair. So if you, for example, next week come to one of our resume stations, either the virtual or the in-person one, and you've had your resume reviewed and it looks great, go ahead and print it as soon as possible after that. The lines in the library can get very, very long to print your resume. And if you want to get to the fair early, we recommend printing ahead of time.
Okay, so I see two questions. One about printing on high quality paper. That doesn't matter. You don't have to print it on pink perfumed paper, like that movie that you might not have seen. But no, regular paper, whatever is in the printer at the time should be fine. I mean, it used to be that people would look for higher quality paper if they were printing them out at home and like actually bringing them in person to, I don't know, an interview or something. But I don't think people care about that anymore. So any kind of decent basic printing paper, I think, is fine. I don't think people care. Is Garamond okay? Do you mean Garamond? I've heard of Garamond, and I'd have to Google it to see if it what it is.
If the asker means Garamond, it is a serif font similar to Times New Roman, so it is probably not recommended. Again, go with the sans serif fonts. I mean, generally, if you're submitting it, especially in a tracking system.
Yeah, so if you've never heard of an applicant tracking system or ATS, this is something that is not human, that is looking at your resume before it gets to a human. So if it's a larger company or something that's going to have hundreds or thousands of applicants, it might go through an applicant tracking system first to pick out keywords and things like that that are important. So that's another reason why you never want to have any pictures or any graphics like on your resume, because it's going to totally mess up the applicant tracking system and it'll basically go in the garbage. So that's what I mean by applicant tracking system. I hope that makes sense. So very quickly, because there will be federal government employers at the fair, let's go ahead and look at federal resumes. Typically, they're going to be just like a chronological resume, but with more stuff on it. Okay. And generally, you will not need one to apply for a federal internship, but you might need one to apply for a federal job after graduation. So usajobs.gov, where all the federal jobs are posted, they actually have their own resume builder in there that can help you build a federal resume. But I actually like people to build them on their own because they're going to look better. So I just want to show you an example of what a federal resume looks like and how it's different from a non-federal resume. So in a moment, I will find what I'm looking for and let's see if I can. Okay, just a second. Okay, so I'm basically going to go back to the Career Center website and share my screen. Okay. So once again, this is the Career Center website. We're going to go back to the resumes section. And you'll see here a little description of a federal resume. And once again, you'll see the USA Jobs resume builder that I mentioned. But if you want to create it outside of that, which I do recommend, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be longer. Okay. It's instead of a 1-page resume, it's going to be like a 2 or 3-page resume. So same stuff at the top, but then you'll see that there's more just added stuff. So more explanation about the coursework that's relevant. Like you'll see, you know, I had said no big blocks of text on resumes. This is an exception. All right. So you'll see not only the titles of the courses, but kind of detailed explanations of it. Now for work experience, there's going to be some extra stuff in here too. You will notice hours per week should be included on a federal resume. Okay. And the names of your supervisor, their contact information, and whether it is okay to contact them. Okay. Very different from a regular resume. Now, what they also like is you to break up your job descriptions into these areas, like 90% of this research intern job is research and writing. Okay, so you have research and writing 90%, and then 3 bullet points under that. And then 10% of this role was administrative support. So then you have the 3 bullet points under that. So they like to see that as well. Now here we have the DAV. Someone working at the DAV for 15 hours a week. You put your salary. So if it's a paid gig or internship job, you would put your salary, how much money, how much US dollars per hour, okay, which does not go on any other kind of resume. Once again, you put your supervisor's name, their phone number, and if it's okay to contact that person. Okay, so this is a 100% customer service job. All right, so it's this extra stuff that's making it longer. Okay, a lot of it looks similar, like the campus involvement section here looks very similar to a regular chronological resume, but they want more detail, salary detail, supervisor, they might want to contact that supervisor, hours per week, etc. So I would say if you do have to do one of these, come and see me at the Career Center, and we'll do it together. But this is a really good example of what they look like. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. We've got a couple more minutes left. Any last minute questions?
There's one in the chat and one in the Q&A, Tammy.
Struggling with getting access to former supervisors' phone numbers. So if you're talking about a federal resume where they expect you to put that stuff on there, if you can't get a phone number, I think the next best thing would be put an email. But once again, you're going to have to contact the supervisor to ask them if it's okay that someone from the federal government will contact them. So ideally, you will eventually get that phone number. But if you have to email that person to ask them if it's okay for the HR or whomever to contact that person, hopefully you can get a phone number out of it. I hope that makes sense. But you should never say, yes, it's okay to contact this person if you haven't asked that supervisor beforehand. Don't do that. Okay. All right. Is there another question? Wait.
Just in the chat.
How do you feel about resumes being okay? I already answered.
Right below that. Yep.
How do you feel about listing core competencies in a brief? That's a functional resume. And it's for these purposes, not what you want. That's for different purposes. That's generally for people who have been out in the working world a long time. But even then, I'm not a fan of it. So you really want to stick with a chronological resume. Okay. All right, we are almost out of time. So there might be room for one more question, but if not, that's okay. Any others?
If not, Tammy, I'm
Yes.
gonna go ahead and just make a plug for our upcoming events.
Yes, please.
Upcoming job fair events. So start tomorrow at 1 p.m. we have Mastering Your Elevator Pitch. So that will be hybrid. You can live stream the in-person recording via Zoom or come join us in Butler Boardroom. If you join in person, you'll get some more one-on-one assistance with your elevator pitch from Career Center staff and advisors. We have a handful of folks helping with that event. And then on Thursday, we have 2 events. They're both geared toward, I see there's a mistake in this, but the second event is actually attending the fair as well. So at noon, we have attending the fair as an international student. And then at 6 p.m., just general tips for attending the job fair. And both of those will include how to use the Career Fair Plus app, which is what we recommend students download. So 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then next week, Monday and Tuesday, we have our resume stations. So take all of Tammy's fantastic advice, create your resume for the job fair, and then come meet with one of our advisors on Monday or Tuesday to get the fine touches, tune-ups to your resume before next Wednesday's fair.
I might be at either one. I definitely will be at both of the resume stations. So you might see me again. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for the fair. And I hope you got something out of this workshop. And I guess we're done. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Tammy. Thank you, everyone.